Welcome, sadhakas. Today we will glimpse the bliss of the Vedic Sthapatya lively at the base of Adi Valmiki Ramayana. Vedic Sthapatya is a manifested format. This format manifestation is of the Divya Dravya transcendental content. This transcendental content flows from orb of the sun through rays of the sun. And this manifestation as a format is lively, this is base of existence phenomenon within human frame as Vedic Sthapatya frame, and also the same is parallel with the existence phenomenon of solar universe within frames and without frames. This being so, we have to glimpse the features of this format, and the essential feature of this format is of values Ardhanareshwar. It happens because of the spatial order of the creators of space. It is the spatial order which is responsible for a dual manifestation as of full unit and also as of half unit. This pair of manifestations of full unit hypercubes and half unit hypercubes make their own logic, which becomes Vedic Mathematics Sequential Logic. Vedic Mathematics Sequential Logic is transcending the linear logic. Therefore, sadhakas fulfilled with intensity efforts to be parallel with the Vedic Mathematics Sequential Logic shall sit comfortably and to permit the transcending mind to be parallel with bliss of Vedic systems. This bliss of Vedic systems is inherently lively in the approach of the sequential logic as well. The sequential logic is the logic of the spatial order of the creators of space. As such, with it, the potentialities of having a sequential jump and still maintaining a continuity. The gap as such becomes a Sopan, a complete manifested domain, and jump therefrom to the next Sopan as such would mean that it is the Adi and Ant of this Sopan which is having a synthetic with Adi and Ant of the subsequent Sukwan. This in a way essentially would mean Adi, which is of TC value 10, equal to the summation value of hypercube 3, has a synthesis with Ant of TC value 14, which is the summation value of hypercube 4. It is this synthesis of hypercube 3 with hypercube 4 together being of value 10 plus 14, 24, parallel with the dimensional frame of 6 creative dimensions of a 6 space. And this in a way would mean that 3 space as domain jumps to 3 space as boundary of a 4 space. It is because of it that the mental states sequentially melt of their own, and there happens intelligence growth parallel with the order of Asht Prakrati systems operative under the supervision and control of Nav Braham. We are going to expose ourselves for this glimpse in terms of 10 steps. These 10 steps are titled as Sequential Logic Initiation, Transition from Sutra 1 to Sutra 2, the reach of sequential progression steps within spatial order, then the 4th quarter of the square. This ahead takes us to Mandukya Upanishad. Then we are at self-referral cyclic continuity. And for its proper appreciation, we revisit Shaloka 42 of the Jyotish Vedanga. And it is here where from we will be having a glimpse of the potentialities of Ganita Upsutra 1 and 10 folds of the TCV of the text of Ganita Upsutra 1 as complementary and supplementary of Ganita Sutra 1, and hence the sequential logic of Vedic mathematics. Sorry. Let us now have a sequential glimpse of these 10 steps in the form of 10 screens. Now, the first screen just depicts the text of Sutra 1 and Upsutra 1, Ekadhiken Purven and Anupurupen. The Ekadhiken Purven is a text of 16 letters and of TC value 75. Ganita Upsutra 1 is a text of 10 letters and is of TC value 42. Value 75 is the synthesis value of a pair of transcendence ranges of transcendental order, and value 42 is the synthesis value of pair of transcendence ranges of a spatial order. It will be blissful to take note that 2 space is having 5 geometries range. So when we shall be visiting and glimpsing and imbibing these values of these texts, we will be blissfully parallel with the logic of Vedic mathematics. Ganita Sutra 1 is the source of Sutra. Ganita Upsutra 1 is the source of Sutra, and Sutra 1 and Sutra 2 together, Upsutra 1 complement and supplement each other. Upsutra 1 bridges the gap between Sutra 1 and Sutra 2. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well to be parallel with the sequential logic of Vedic mathematics of Ganita Sutras. The text of Ganita Sutra 2, Nikhlim Navasta Charmam Dashata, is a composition of triple word formulations, namely Nikhlim, Navasta Charmam, and Dashata. These 3 word formulations are availing 7, 14, and 7 letters respectively. Therefore, the reach of the sequential logic of linear order of reach from n to n plus 1, when is complemented by the Anurupen rule, symmetry rule, proportionality rule of following the form as it is framed rule of Ganita Upsutra 1, we will be having a reach at Ganita Sutra 2. Ganita Sutra 1 is a sequential logic of having sequential progression from one end and progression from the given initial point of value n has a reach at n plus 1, and that way there is infinitely long reach under the logic of Sutra 1. However, the transition at Ganita Sutra 2 becomes a transition of a reach from both ends. This reach from both ends would mean reach at the middle from both ends. This reach at the middle from both ends would mean having a spatial format for the middle. It is this feature which deserves to be comprehended well so that we can be parallel with the sequential logic of Ganita Sutras. Ganita Sutras sequential logic is that each Sopan domain is to be exhaustively covered from its beginning point to its end point. And then there is to be a jump from first Sopan, first domain, to the next domain. The next domain will be having the Adi, its initial points, and the first domain will be having its end. So the reach that way for continuity is to be from Ant, value 14, to beginning Adi, value 10. It is this reach from value 14 to value 10 will take us to hypercube 4 to hypercube 3. This helps us appreciate as to how 3 space as a domain, as Adi for the first Sopan, during this continuity transition has a distinct role, and this role is going to be of a dimensional order. Therefore, sadhakas fulfilled with intensity of urge to be parallel with sequential logic of Vedic mathematics shall permit the transcending mind to be parallel with the integrated format of the text of sutras and upsutras together. The Ganita Sutras text as such has a jump from Sutra 1 to Sutra 2, Sutra 2 to Sutra 3, and so on. The gaps in between is to be bridged, and it is being bridged by the Ganita Upsutras. So the integrated format comes to be Ganita Sutra 1, Ganita Upsutra 1, Ganita Sutra 2, Ganita Upsutra 2, Ganita Sutra 3, and so on. As such, we shall sit comfortably and we shall permit our mind to be parallel with this organization of bridging the gaps between the discrete entities ranges. The set of discrete entities with their placements one after the other will leave the gap in between first discrete entity and the second discrete entity. This gap is responsible for discontinuity, but to transit and transform and to maintain a continuity, we have to have a mathematical entity to bridge the gaps. These mathematical entities as such in the form of the text of Ganita Sutras are the Ganita Upsutras. Therefore, the system to maintain continuity with discrete entities is in itself a challenge which has been successfully met by the Vedic mathematics. The Ganita Sutras, together with Ganita Upsutras, that way make a complete text. Therefore, we shall have proper comprehension and proper appreciation of having the text of Ganita Upsutras 13 in number, along with the text of Ganita Sutras 16 in number. One may have a pause here and take note that the values range number 1 to number 16 gives rise to precisely 29 factors. It is this additional value 13 over 16 in the form of 29 factors is the base of this system of maintaining continuity with discretes. This feature deserves to be appreciated, and it is with this appreciation that we will be having comprehension of the conclusion of Yoga Darshan, Patanjali Yoga Darshan in Shaloka 32 of the fourth Kavalya Pada of Patanjali Yoga Darshan, which preserves as that every sequential progression has its end reach, Kram Samapti. Kram means sequence and Samapti means end reach. Every sequence, every sequential progression has its end reach. We have to appreciate it. We have to imbibe it if we want to be parallel with the sequential logic of the Vedic systems. The formulations pair, Kram and Samapti, deserve to be revisited. The formulation Kram is of value 13, while the formulation Samapti is of value 26. C, 26 is double of 13. Further C, 13 is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 3.5 of half unit within creator's space, while value 26 is the summation value of 4 folds of hypercube 7 of full unit within creator's space. One shall have a pause here. One shall permit the mind to imbibe these values, how the Kram sequence has a Samapti and reach, how every sequence with its sequential rule of a reach from first member of the sequence to the next member of sequence will ultimately manifest in a finished form this sequence. The Kram Samapti, the reach of this sequential order, the ultimate manifestation of this is the rule of the manifestation. We have to appreciate as that every sequence has its end reach. Therefore, sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of urge shall sit comfortably and to permit the transcending mind to be parallel with this logic of sequential reach. This logic deserves to be appreciated. This logic deserves to be imbibed. This logic is that every sequence has its reach, the end reach, Kram Samapti, S small h 3.5, capital H 7, hypercube 7 of full unit and hypercube 3.5 of half unit are the pair of manifestations. And these pair of manifestations in both sequential orders are of 7 steps reach. as the half units begin with half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. And here full units have reached 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How these pair of sequential manifestations ultimately have the potentiality to bridge the gaps of the discrete ranges. We have to imbibe it. For it, let us have a visit to the creators of space, fourth space. Fourth space is of a spatial order, means two space is playing the role of a dimension of a fourth space. There are quadruple spatial dimensions which constitute the dimensional frame of fourth space. Within fourth space domain, our 12-edged cube, because of liberty of motion towards the fourth dimension, available only in fourth space, manifests an additional edge, the 13th edge. Therefore, 13-edged cube is the manifestation feature. However, as the dimensions of fourth space are spatially in order, as such, the 13th edge of 12-edged cube in fourth space, by having a transition from static state to a dynamic state in terms of the spatial fourth dimension, will provide value 13 for each of the pair of axes of the spatial order. It is here where we will be having sequential reach from value 13 as a 13th edge to a single axis of the spatial order to value 26 as the value of the pair of axes of the spatial order. And then as we know that it is 5 space which is playing the role of origin of a 4 space. So 5 space in the role of an origin when will transcend, means when the spatial format of the 13th edge of the hypercube will have a reach at the center, the seat of the origin of a 4 space. The transcendence of a 5 space therefrom will put 5 space in a transition state of a dynamic state as a dimension. So 5 space as a dimension will manifest as 5, 6, 7, 8 hypercube 7 format, and the summation value of 5, 6, 7, 8 as such is 26. So the Kram Samapti, the logic of sequence, of its construction for its entities, making it as a members of a sequence, ultimate in terms of the spatial order, has their end reach. And it is this end reach which deserves to be comprehended. It is with comprehension of this feature of the end reach of every sequence which will ultimately bring us parallel with the logic, the sequential logic of the Vedic mathematics, which essentially is of the spatial order format of the creators of space. So if we want to melt the conditioning because of the linear order of 3 space, we have to transcend therefrom. And transcendence from linear order would mean reaching a spatial order, that is having a reach within a creator's space. And what happens within a creator's space for the solids with cube as a representative regular body of 3 space of 12 edges setup acquires additional edge, and that because of the spatial order requires value 26, the same as such with its tag at the center, the origin seat, will have a transcendence for 5 space as a origin, and 5 space as an origin in its dynamic state as a dimension will manifest the outer space as a format of hypercube 7 of 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 folds of summation value 26. It is Kram Samapti. This is to be imbibed. This is to be comprehended well. And it is with comprehension of it that we will be face to face with as to how the spatial order, that is a surface, that is a square, is having its internal manifestation. Let us have a pause. Square is a synthetic setup of quadruple quarter squares, figure 2, and that way sequentially each quarter itself being a square will also take us to sub-quarters. Now, let us have a pause. If we are having quadruple squares, and if we place, we have 3 of them, then see the figure 4 will make the synthetic setup in terms of 3 quarter squares. It appears that the 4th is missing, but still it is not, as the location, the demarcation, the determination, the fixation of the 4th quarter is inherently there in this synthetic setup of these triple quarters, figure 5. So the 4th quarter as such is there, and it is not there. It is this dual status of the 4th quarter which deserves to be comprehended well, and sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of urge to be parallel with sequential logic of Vedic mathematics shall sit comfortably and to permit the transcending mind to be parallel with this inherent features of the synthetic setup of a square as a quarter squares, of which only 3 are in manifest form, while the 4th is in an unmanifest form. Now, let us visit the Upanishadic formats. Mandukya Upanishad is the principal Upanishad. This is the first Transcendental Upanishad. Isha Upanishad is the first scriptural domain, creative domain, Yajurved domain, Upanishad. And Mandukya Upanishad is a transcendental phenomenon. Now, this Upanishad deserves to be visited time and again. Sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of urge to be parallel with Vedic systems and sequential logic of Vedic mathematics, and have intensity to transcend from the linear order of 3 space and to reach the spatial order of a 4 space. And sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of urge to melt their conditioning because of a linear order shall visit this Upanishad. And the organization of this Upanishad is that Braham is of 4 quarters, Atma is of 4 quarters, and the Om formulation as well is of 4 components. But the composition Om is a composition of 3 letters, A, U, and Ma. The first 3 quarters as A, U, and Ma, and the 4th quarter is the synthetic setup of these 3 letters Om. Let us sit comfortably. Let us permit our mind to imbibe this feature, this organization, this knowledge, this enlightenment, this system, this logic. And the letter A is of TCV 1, letter U is of TCV 3, letter Ma is of TCV 9. See these triples, 1, 3, 9, are of expression formats 3 raised to power 0, 3 raised to power 1, and 3 raised to power 2. And step ahead, it may look like that it should have been 3 raised to power 3, but it should be 4 raised to power 2. let us have a halt. Let us have a pause. Let us sit comfortably. Let us revisit. Let us reappreciate it. And when we will pose to ourselves that 3 raised to power 3 as 27 is the nakshatras, 3 raised to power 3 or the components of a cube as 8 corner points, 6 surfaces, 12 edges, and 1 volume. But it is not the complete setup, as center and the dimensional frames are missing. So if we want a complete logic of a linear order, then for it, we also have to have 4 another components, namely 3 axes and an origin, and it will make 31. And then and only then it will become hypercube 3. So hypercube 3 as a linear order will make a structural setup for its body as of 31 components. Now see, 1 plus 3 plus 9 are 13 and Om is 16. So 13 means these are simply parallel with 13 Upsutras. The sutras are ahead. It is Om, it is 16. So 13 plus 16 as 29 is the TC value of formulation Brahma, creator, the supreme, the four-headed Lord. The logic is to have its completion only with a reach in the creator's space. Therefore, sadhakas are fulfilled with intensity of energy to be parallel with the sequential logic of Vedic systems shall transcend from the linear logic and enter the spatial logic. For it, we have to have a revisit to the Devanagari compactified formats, which are 5: letters format, numbers format, sthapatya format, content flow, and manifestation. How these 5 formats in their compactified form make a system of a cyclic features is to be learned. And for it, we have to learn as to how Varan, the letter, the Swar, the vowel, Matra, the Mayer value, Balam, the power, Sam, that vitality, force, and Santan, the lineage, the generations, from single birth to the second birth cyclic orders. This self-referral cyclic continuity is to be chased, to be followed. And for it, we have to reach at a system which is having simultaneous functional mathematics of a compactified format of all the 5 formats. One shall sit comfortably and to permit the transcending mind to be parallel with these working steps of the Vedic mathematics. Let us visit Lagd Yajurved Jyotish Vedanga, which in its Shaloka 42 preserves as to how the given system is to be made of a spatial order to make it a cyclic system. One shall be through these values, and it is only by being through these values that we will be in a position to melt our conditioning, and we will be parallel with the logic of Ganita Sutras. And for it, let us have a fresh visit to Upsutra 1, which is to complement Sutra 1. Upsutra 1 Anurupe is a text of 10 letters and it is of TC value 42. And value 10 is the summation value of 4 folds of cube, hypercube 3, while for value 42 is the spatial order, transcendence synthesis. So linear order 31 has a transcendence for pair of linear axes, but the pair of spatial axes, the transcendence ranges of spatial order, the synthesis of pair of transcendence ranges of spatial order. This is the sequential reach. This is the end reach. It is the kram samapti. This is how Vedic systems, Vedic mathematics, Vedic sequential logic is there inherently embedded in the text of Ganita Sutras themselves at the initial phase and stage of Ganita Sutra 1 as a source of Sutra and Ganita Upsutra 1 as source of Sutra, which both complement and supplement each other. For further insight, we shall be through all the 10 folds of TC value of Anurupe. Thank you very much.